Welcome back, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're looking at one of the most massive, most consequential geopolitical puzzles of the 21st century. Today's explainer is all about the concept of China's peaceful rise. We're going to unpack the official framework, the massive global economic impacts, and the international reactions using some incredible source materials that lay out both the promises and the criticisms. My goal today is to give you a crystal clear, structured look at the shifting global dynamic without taking any sides so you can understand exactly how the world is reacting to a new superpower.
Right off the bat, this is the core question from our source material, and we really need to keep it in the back of our minds throughout this entire explainer. Is China's rise genuinely peaceful, or is the concept a strategic narrative specifically designed to facilitate its emergence as a global power? It's a fascinating question of intent versus action. Are we looking at a completely new model of how a superpower acts on the world stage, or, well, is this a calculated cover story? Let's figure it out together.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. What is China's peaceful rise? 2. The opportunities of China's peaceful rise. 3. Challenges and criticisms. 4. Regional response. 5. Can a rising superpower truly rise without conflict? And 6. Our conclusion.
Section 1. What is China's peaceful rise?
So the term peaceful rise, or Haiping Jieqi, didn't just appear out of thin air. It emerged in the early 2000s. And why? Because as China's economic engine really started roaring, the international community naturally started getting nervous. Historically, when a new power rises, it disrupts the status quo, and that often leads to conflict. So this concept was introduced as an intentional narrative to reassure the globe. It was basically a message saying, yes, we are growing in economic and political influence, but no, we are not going to threaten global stability.
To build that reassurance, the narrative relies on 5 key principles. Think of these as the architectural framework of the whole peaceful rise strategy. We've got peaceful development and economic cooperation right at the top, meaning growth through trade, not conquest. Then there's non-interference, which is a promise not to meddle in the internal affairs of other sovereign nations. We also see win-win partnership and the pursuit of a multipolar world order, which is essentially pushing back against a world dominated by just one single hegemon. It's a very compelling, highly structured diplomatic narrative.
Moving on to Section 2, the opportunities of China's peaceful rise.
Look, China is now the world's second largest economy, and it acts as a massive driver of global growth. For developing nations, this is a real game changer. China provides a crucial alternative source of investment and technology outside of traditional Western institutions. They actively promote what's called South-South cooperation, meaning developing nations partnering directly with one another. This brings desperately needed infrastructure and connectivity to huge regions of the world. The economic opportunities generated here are absolutely undeniable.
And this brilliantly illustrates how that economic cooperation takes physical form. The Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. We're talking about a vast global infrastructure network of existing and planned railroads, pipelines, and maritime ports stretching all the way from East Asia into Europe and Africa. To put that into perspective, that is a $1 trillion investment spanning over 100 countries. This isn't just abstract policy. This is literal steel and concrete driving unprecedented economic connectivity.
However, Section 3, Challenges and Criticisms.
While the economic outreach focuses on connection, there are distinct zones of strategic suspicion and friction. Territorially, we've got major disputes. There's the Nine-Dash Line, a heavily contested maritime border in the South China Sea, alongside the deeply complex issue of Taiwan reunification. Domestically, our sources highlight severe human rights concerns in regions like Xinjiang, Tibet, and Hong Kong. So we are really seeing two realities playing out across the globe: unprecedented economic outreach paired with intense territorial and internal political friction.
Our sources break down these criticisms into core strategic and ethical concerns. Critics point heavily to China's rapid military modernization, like their massive naval expansion, and their assertive behavior in disputed areas. For many international observers, this directly contradicts those stated principles of peaceful development and non-interference. Furthermore, political censorship and human rights issues conflict heavily with the liberal democratic values held by many Western nations. This right here is where the narrative of the peaceful rise faces its most severe stress test on the global stage.
And we can't ignore the economics of this friction. Building all those railroads and ports is incredibly expensive. Significant concerns have arisen around debt diplomacy.
Under the BRI, several participating countries have accumulated massive debts to China. Take Sri Lanka, for example, where debt struggles actually led to the handover of a major strategic port. Critics worry this could trap developing nations in completely unsustainable financial obligations, essentially trading infrastructure for political leverage.
Section 4. Regional Response.
So how is the neighborhood reacting? Well, two very distinct strategies are emerging right in China's backyard. The ASEAN countries are walking a really delicate tightrope. They are cooperating deeply with China economically, while simultaneously hedging their bets by strengthening security ties elsewhere. Now contrast that with Japan and India. They're taking a much firmer stance, increasingly strengthening direct defense cooperation with the U.S. to counterbalance China's growing military presence. It's a fascinating split in regional strategy.
And speaking of the U.S., their response is pivotal here. The source material outlines that the United States is actively strengthening its own alliances and partnerships all across the Indo-Pacific region. The official stance is pretty nuanced. The U.S. and its allies say they will absolutely support China's rise, but only if it aligns with a rules-based international order and shared values. If it doesn't, well, the strategy will shift towards intensified containment and balancing.
Which brings us to Section 5. Can a rising superpower truly rise without conflict?
According to the analysis in our sources, it is possible, but it is absolutely not guaranteed. Avoiding conflict isn't just about crossing our fingers and hoping for peace. It requires active, measurable work. Specifically, the text notes that a truly peaceful rise requires consistent restraint, total transparency, and a strict respect for international law from the rising power. Peace, in this context, is an active verb.
So, the crucial point is that the world currently stands at a crossroads: trust versus containment. If China addresses global security concerns, respects sovereignty, and demonstrates reciprocity, peaceful coexistence is highly achievable. However, if that trust isn't built and the rules-based order is threatened, the U.S. and its allies are fully prepared to intensify their containment strategies. The entire geopolitical future hinges on which of these two paths is actually taken.
Section 6. Conclusion.
What you really should take away from this explainer is that this is not a finished history lesson. This is an active, ongoing, real-time narrative. The future depends entirely on choices being made right now, today. The literal actions taken by China on the global stage, combined with the strategic responses from all the other international powers we've discussed, are what will ultimately decide the outcome. Which brings us right back to where we started. Will the peaceful rise become a true historical reality that reshapes how we view global power? Or will it be remembered merely as a strategic narrative used to mask traditional superpower ambitions? As focused learners, you now have the structural framework to watch the news, track the investments, monitor the friction zones, and evaluate that answer for yourselves. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this incredibly complex topic today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.